Hey guys, John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel once again. So I recently got a new guitar, my ESP LTD Phoenix 1000 Evertune in Silver Sunset Burst. If you haven't seen my review and demo, do check it out up here or down here if you're interested. Now it's a great guitar that I love to play, it looks great, and it has an ebony fretboard, a Makassar ebony fretboard to be precise, and it was also made in Indonesia. And unfortunately, the guitar had two cracks in the ebony fretboard. One on the 4th fret and the other on the 16th fret, so higher up on the neck. Apparently this issue isn't very uncommon with ebony woods for fretboards, and perhaps it has been happening more frequently recently, but who knows, it could also be the internet that is just kind of blowing it up. For example, I also know that solar guitars who make their main instruments in Indonesia have also been having some issues with quality control and cracks in the ebony boards. But of course, I don't know if it has anything to do with the country of origin at all. Apparently, because of the brittle nature of the ebony woods, ebony fretboards are more prone to developing cracks if they are not dried properly, or if they're simply just too dry, cracks can develop. I am not an expert, but this is what I've been told anyway. My local luthier, who I did contact for some advice, did tell me that the optimal humidity for a guitar room is between 50 and 70%. The internet has told me something slightly different, between 40 and 60%. Now, I did get myself a hydrometer so I could measure the humidity for the first time in my life. Yay! And luckily, it says 53% right now, so that's pretty good. So I think that 50 should be an all right number, to be honest. Having said all of that, this is actually the very first time in my life that I've ever gotten a guitar with ebony cracks in the board. So this is kind of new to me. And the cracks already were on the guitar before it arrived because I discovered them like 1 hour after taking it out of the box when I took off the strings. Of course, taking good care of your fretboard is recommended. Oiling it every once in a while will keep it nice and moist. Not too moist, of course, but not dry. You don't want your fretboard to become too dry or else it might crack. Now, if you encounter cracks on your fretboard and the fretboard is super dry, some people recommend oiling the board first and then doing that for a couple of days or even weeks to make sure that the board is moist enough before you start repairing the cracks. Because the cracks might actually shrink because of the moisture and because of the expansion of the wood. In my case, the cracks were super small, so I decided to go ahead and fix this within a couple of days. I could have sent the guitar back, of course, it was a brand new guitar, but since I loved this guitar so much, I just decided to go for it and fix the cracks myself and have a crack at it, basically. In this video, what I'm going to do is just go over the process and show you guys how I fixed it. Big disclaimer though, I'm not an expert, I'm not a luthier, and I did not come up with any of these things myself. I got help from a couple of friends, you know who you are, and also Google, so the internet. But I think it did turn out great in the end, so if you encounter a crack in your ebony board, this might be worth a shot, if you've got the guts. To do this, you need a couple of things. You're going to need sandpaper. I actually bought a pack with varying degrees of grit, going from about 200 grit all the way up to around 2000 or so, with varying degrees in between. That was a great purchase. And very fluid super glue is also recommended. Some people use wood glue, and some people also mentioned CA glue, which is a kind of super glue, but very fluid. I'm not very sure about that, but I just bought regular super glue. And I bought a little bottle with a sort of very small nozzle for precise work, but I know that some people also like to use needles to inject the glue into the cracks. But I just used the nozzle because the crack was so small that I don't know if I could have fit a needle in there anyway. It's also handy to have something like a razor to scrape off the excess glue. I don't have a razor because I don't shave with razors, but I used the inside of a Stanley knife basically. Something like that will do. And also painter's tape or masking tape is essential. Just make sure you get the kind of tape that doesn't leave glue residue on your guitar. So I took off all the strings and started sanding the frets with 400 grit sandpaper. A funny note is that I quickly realized that the ebony board was in fact dyed or stained because the natural color and grain of the ebony board started to come through. which wasn't an issue for me. I don't mind the natural grain of that ebony, but if you mind that, keep that in mind. So if your ebony board is very black, there might be some paint or stain or whatever involved to make it look more black. So I sanded the fret a little bit, and the dust that came free, so the dust residue, I used that to basically fill in the crack a little bit, which also happened automatically basically. And in my case, the cracks were so small that they filled up quite nicely and quite quickly with the dust residue. But the advantage of this is that it will have the same color as your fretboard. And then I taped off the entire fret except the very small area where the crack was, just to make sure that when you spill some glue, it doesn't get on your fretboard or on the frets. And when that was done, I very carefully poured some glue onto the crack and let it sit for about 10 minutes to dry. If your crack is very big and deep, you might want to do this a couple of times until the crack fills up nicely. And then I took off the tape. Unfortunately, there was some glue under the tape, so I do recommend putting multiple layers of tape on the fret before you start gluing, just to avoid leakage like this. It's not a huge problem because you can remove it, but the less you have to remove, the better. So this was a learning experience for me in many ways. Then I took the knife or the razor and I put some tape on that as well, leaving a very small area of the actual knife's edge, about 1 millimeter or so that when you scrape off the glue, you only scrape off the part which actually has the glue, so you won't damage the rest of your fret. And I used that to scrape off the excess glue on top of the fretboard, just to make it a bit more even before the sanding basically. And then I started sanding, starting with the 400 grit, going up to 600, 800, 1000, and I believe up to 1500 or 2000 or so, just to make it nice and smooth. Just use your eyes and use your fingers to feel the fretboard and stop when it feels nice and smooth and when you don't feel the crack anymore. And then I oiled the fretboard and it was all done. In my case, since the actual color of the fretboard came through on that fret and the other one as well that I fixed, instead of making those frets more dark, I decided to blend it in a little bit, so I sanded the frets around it a little bit as well, and it looks fine. But if you want your fretboard to remain very black, if it is that color, maybe you can use some black stain or dye to make it dark again. I'm not sure on that. So I did this for both the 4th fret and the 16th fret, and they are both perfect now, so I'm super happy about that. You can't really see the cracks anymore, you can't feel them anymore, the frets feel super smooth. So that's it, and now I can fix these issues myself if they do arrive again in the future. It's handy to have skills like this so you can do things yourself, and so you don't have to bring your guitar to your luthier every time when something like this happens. Now, if there was a big crack across multiple frets, I don't know what I'd do, to be honest. That might be too big of a job to do myself. I hope I'll never have to encounter something like that. So I guess this is a quick and easy fix for smaller cracks. That's all for this video. I hope it helped you and I hope that you enjoyed this video as well. If you did enjoy it, please drop a like and subscribe and a comment in the comment section down below, as that really helps out the channel. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you guys so much and I hope to see you soon. Cheers!